Cherri, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. And I know we're going to be talking about identity today, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah.
And I know that you've got quite a story regarding that. So would you like to tell us a bit about your story?
Sure. So when I was 8 years old, my parents divorced, and that was back in the late 60s. So at that time, divorce was very rare. And especially where we lived in Southern California, we were in the LA County, but in the suburbs of it. I didn't know of anybody else whose parents had divorced and really didn't even know what the word meant. But from that, life still went on good for me. It was just different. But then when my parents remarried, and that's when I really started struggling with my identity. From that, we were in California, and then we moved to Oklahoma. And so in 1 year, I went to 3 different schools in 3 different states because my mom remarried. And going then in there, what happened was that when my parents remarried, then you're thrown into these different families. And so the family core that I always knew was not only wasn't no more, but then we're trying to integrate into other families.
Yeah.
And so through that process, of having, new step-parents and grandparents and siblings, we were, I don't know how to say it right, but, you're just trying to fit in, but I never felt like I really fit in and really accepted in them. And then just through the course of that and going to a new school and different names and just all the different new things for me over time. And I started using my stepfather's name, my last name. And that's really, I think, a lot of where my struggle came from. Because it wasn't my name, but I was using a name that wasn't mine. And so as I would, fill out even something as simple as writing your name on your schoolwork, I struggled with it.
Yeah.
And then all the way through, when you start to graduate, and I had to have 2 sets of invitations for the 2 different names. And anything I did, I always had 2 or more sets, depending on which family members were getting it. And just going through that, and I know others have struggled with this, where maybe you're not one set of family, you just don't feel like you quite fit in, or there's different levels of who you are and what your last name is as to how you're treated. And, having both a new stepmom and a stepdad and all the different rules there and dealing with all those different areas. Just sent me on a sense of losing my identity. Now we were in church. I loved the Lord. And that's where I always got my balance was, knowing that Christ was in me.
Yeah.
And that I always loved the Lord, was always in church, but there was still that level of what if and who am I, because, I wasn't using my name, and then wanting to have my own name that nobody could take away from me.
Yeah.
And so, in sharing my story with others, we find that so many of us struggle with this, whether it's because your parents have divorced or remarried, and then you're dealing with not only one new set of families, but, I had 2 new sets of families.
Yeah.
And all the, extended families going on from that. But we also take so much of our identity and who we are by those core family members. And so whether it's because of divorce or there's been abuse in the home, and then we take on this level of guilt and shame, whether it's verbal abuse, sometimes we just don't fit in at school. We may struggle making friends, or we've been betrayed by somebody. We maybe have poverty or alcoholism in our family. And then sometimes, we may look really good, and we look at that house and we think, oh, I could only live in that house or have that family. And then we start, opening the doors, and we see that we really don't want to live in that home. And there's just so much loss there from our identity. And so that's just kind of my heart behind this, is seeking out what it is. And then as a lymphologist, we hold so much of the stress and the trauma from these in our physical body, and then it can show up, and causes ailments later on. So I see it a lot with clients, and anyway, that's kind of where we're coming from here.
Right. Yeah. That's quite interesting. I mean, I've grown up in a secure home. My parents stayed together. So I can't really imagine what it must be like to be in a home where, your parents divorce and then both remarry. So you've suddenly got more integrated families and more extended families.
Yeah. So it can be quite tricky. So just to put it nicely, and that doesn't always necessarily get better. Everybody get along, and, you're fighting for your place on the totem pole, and where do I fit in now? And we're all struggling with that, whether you come from a divorced family or not. There's still so much, even in just homes that are together with, more siblings, there's just still a lot that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
So from that, I just really wanted to encourage everybody that, you are beautiful. You are beleza. Beleza is from the Portuguese and coming from the Sanskrit, and it means the house where God shines. Something I've learned recently from Lissy Tomke in a course I just took from hers online. Great lady, really enjoyed her course. That it means, so when we take a look, go all the way back to creation. So we're going to Genesis 1:11. It says, then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. Yeah. And it was so. So they, reproduced after themselves as their kind. And then verse 12, the land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw it, and it was good. Yeah. And then we move down to verse 24. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And then in verse 26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, over the livestock, and all the wild animals, over all the creatures that move along the ground. So the difference here is the creatures and the animals and the plant life, they reproduce after their kind. Yeah. God made mankind after his image. Yeah. And we could always take the word good from the Hebrew. In the adverb, it can mean beautiful. So you are good. You are beautiful. You are made in the very image of God. The animals are not made in God's image. They were made in their kind. Yeah. And Satan then likes to tell us that we're not good enough. We're not smart enough. Maybe you're not pretty or handsome enough. You're not intelligent enough. And we get these thoughts in our mind. Maybe we've made a mistake and he keeps reminding it to us. So today is the day to forgive yourself for those things. You are made in God's image, and you are enough. You are the house where God shines. And the Lord told us, here we are in Psalms 139:14. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. That's from Psalms 139:14. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind and with his strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. And I think that's one of the hardest verses that we have, is to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Because so many of us don't love ourselves.
Yeah.
And until we need to listen to the dialogue that we carry in our head. Because, if you stop and listen to what you're saying to yourself, would you speak to someone else in the same manner that you speak to yourself?
Yeah, and I mean, some people actually would, and they do, and some people don't.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times we just don't think about, what am I saying? Oh, well, that was a stupid thing to do. And we just kind of go on. But we wouldn't say that, well, that was stupid. Why'd you do that? Necessarily to our spouse or a child. Sometimes we do, and we catch ourselves, hopefully. And so we're kind of what's going on. But Proverbs 27:19 tells us, as water reflects a face, so a man's heart reflects the man. And so, our words are like a reflection of what we have going on.
Yeah. Which verse is it that says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks?
Proverbs 18:21, the tongue has power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Where did I see that? Don't know where that verse is found offhand. And that's exactly, it's so true. And so then I wanted to carry over here, as a lymphologist, I deal with inflammation.
Yeah.
And this is where we talk about most pain and disease will enter the body. Inflammation is caused by one of three ways: toxins, traumas, thoughts. Our thought pattern affects our health and our mindset, our relationships, our finances, friendships, even our career. Our trauma is stored in our lymphatic system. Whenever we have something go on, our cells have memory. Trauma can be anything from a bruise or a broken bone, a broken heart. And then the other way, so inflammation is called from toxins. Traumas are thoughts. Toxins, can be anything that we breathe. Unfortunately, in our today's society, we can't get away from it. But our thoughts, the thoughts are the one things that we can control.
Yeah.
And it's one area that we don't necessarily think about. But our emotions play a large role in our health, and our negative emotions cause negative results in our health. Yeah.
I was on Instagram today, and I follow someone called Dr. Michael Murray. I don't know if you follow him, if you know him. But he had written today that our emotions could lead to inflammation.
Yes. Yeah. And they do. So, like right here, anger, unforgiveness, can lead to areas, cancer, controlling issues, can lead to edema, unforgiveness, can lead to early aging and paralysis, whether it's physical or mental. So, exactly that our emotions are all tied up in it. Okay, so, and then I've, from Dr. Caroline Leaf, and found an article from hers from a ways back. She just found I've got part of it here, where she writes that 75 to 95% of our illnesses that plague us today are a direct result of our thoughts and our thought life. What we think about affects us physically and emotionally. It's an epidemic epidemic of toxic emotions, What's interesting is the average person has over 30,000 thoughts a day. Through an uncontrolled thought life, we create conditions for illness, and we can actually make ourselves sick. And I know I've been I'm guilty of that, where something will happen and I automatically go to a negative thing and think about what all this could lead to.
Yeah, yeah.
And the next thing I know is, my stomach hurts, or we talk about that makes me sick to the stomach, as it affects our emotions and our gut health and just our overall health.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's almost natural for people to verge towards the negative than the positive, because when I was training in positive psychology, we kind of talked about this, how it's like people just veer towards the negative than the positive.
Yeah, we do. I wonder why we do that, because the phone can ring and you think, oh, that's that person. It's got to be something negative, instead of thinking, well, they've got good news for me. Right? So trying to take control and look for the good in it. And I know we've talked about this before, about gratitude and how we can change that and look for the positive things that we have and how we can take control. And you can probably speak more into that with your background about gratitude and how we can change those negative first thoughts into something positive. Yeah,
I think we have to intentionally sort of focus on the positive, like with gratitude exercises. They're very intentional. People usually spend time in the morning when they're gratitude journaling. They're intentionally sitting down, thinking of, X number of good things, or just thinking of all the good things. And sometimes it's even not obviously good things. It's even like things that we take for granted, but they're showing gratitude for it. So these things have to be done intentionally.
Right. So when you find yourself really like keeping your journal or being grateful, like keeping that gratitude journal, do you find yourself going more to the positive? Like say the phone rings, that it's going to be good news? Do you find yourself leaning that way more since you're being intentional to be grateful?
Personally, for me, I find that I can be affected by the circumstances and situation at times. And with those times, you really have to be more deliberate into thinking, well, okay, this is happening right now. It's not good, but okay, I'm going to have to like deliberately go towards what is good. Deliberately go towards, okay, but what is good? It's not like whatever situation you're in, whatever circumstance you're in, it's never 100% bad.
Right.
There's always something else that's nice or good or, pleasant that is actually happening around you if you actually care to look. And I think maybe you almost need to train yourself to get to a stage where if you're in a bad situation or a bad circumstance, then you can remember to even look, focus towards anything positive.
Right. And like I know when I say something is happening or there's a situation unfolding, a lot of times I have to sit back and be intentional about being grateful or finding things, for the gratitude journal. And sometimes it's, once a day isn't enough. I have to do it on an hourly basis, depending on the type of situation going on.
Yeah.
And because I do like to start my day with the gratitude journal.
Yeah.
To spend time thinking of what is it that I am grateful for. Some days there's so much to be thankful for, and other days you sit there kind of struggling, but there's always something to find.
Yeah, and I mean, as people say, and this is true, if you're struggling to find something, even that just that you're alive, you're breathing, you've got arms and legs that you can use that work, things like that.
And another thing I find is just taking deep breaths and really do that deep breathing and being intentional about our breathing. And that helps to, recenter us, to get our bearings back. So now I can calm down and I can start thinking of things that I'm grateful for. And I can take and make a decision that I need to, but not until I get back to center where I'm grounded. One of those great ways is through breathing and breathing exercise. Just simply breathing in, holding it, and release slowly. can really change, your whole mood in just a couple of minutes to where you can make a decision.
Yeah.
And, and depending on it, sometimes for me, I'll look at a situation and then what's the worst thing that could happen? And then I can work my way back to center from, okay, if that were to happen, I can handle it. So now I can work my way back and then I can turn around and move forward. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but it allows me to go back to being center and figure out, okay, this isn't that bad. If that happens, then, we can live with this. This is how we can move forward. And then I'm able to make the decisions and move forward. And usually that worst case scenario never happens. I just made it all up in my mind.
Yeah.
You're able to move forward and know that, okay, we can handle this and it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah. So regarding identity, you had a summit recently, was it?
I did. I hosted a summit back in December calling Recovering Your Identity and then taking lessons from Rudolph, Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah.
So obviously it was right at Christmas time. And there's just a lot of different lessons in Rudolph that we can learn from where he was rejected. Even Santa Claus came in and rejected him. How much worse can it be, right?
I know.
When Santa says you can never do my sleigh, cover that nose. So he goes from this and being rejected and his dad always covering his nose and telling him, you'll get used to that. Cover, fitting in is more important than showing who you are because then you'll be rejected, And some of it was pride on his dad's part, on Donner's part. And how much of that do we go through where we don't meet our parents' expectations?
Yeah.
And, because Rudolph was born into a great family. He was anticipated. He was loved. And they were showing him off right up until that red nose spin off. And then, and then it changed for him. But if you follow it, there's just so many lessons there. But Rudolph was always kind. And if you watch through the whole movie, he's always kind. And, then we have the elf that's also a misfit. Because he wants to be a dentist and not a toy maker. And so sometimes it can be, physical, and sometimes it's, like we say, we just don't quite fit in. Maybe we're too nerdy, or we don't do the sports and like to read. It can be anything. But getting back to who we are and accepting us that, anyway, so with Rudolph, we go back, and then, not only was he rejected at birth, but then he becomes the hero. But he's also the leader. And so now then he leads Santa's sleigh. So besides being the hero, he's also the leader, and how much of that did he learn? He stuck out on his own and he went out and he helped others. And so there's just really a lot to learn in Rudolph.
Yeah.
So, but that was, in Recovering Your Identity, Lessons from Rudolph. And I hosted that back in December. And I still have, we have a Facebook group out there for it. And it was very interesting. And just looking at not only our identity, but how it helps and it affects our health. And so, it was taking more, not just the mindset, but our health and our physical bodies as well.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
And what are the ways that when people recover their identity, how does that affect them physically?
Well, like with our lymphatic system, because like I said, we do hold trauma in our lymphatic system. And so when we're able to release that, like I said, it can be inflammation. And inflammation can lead to, pain and disease when it's not dealt with over long periods of time, and edema. But we're able to then move forward. So not only are they feeling better, they release the toxins of all those emotions that are holding them back. that able then to make decisions in the brain fog and whatever else. Everybody handles it a little bit differently.
Sure.
But it changes those emotions. And so, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of overall there things that I would say that you could do at home just to help relieve inflammation of your lymphatic system, and that will help release the toxins. Or one of my favorites is just rebounding, like with the mini trampoline, and just bouncing. And as you start little, like not getting your feet off the mat, and then over time build up. But it does help to force your body to start releasing those toxins and getting the oxygen to the cells that we really need, so that the waste can be removed and we get the oxygen in and we can release those toxins. If you have somebody around you that does lymphatic detox work, would be great. Just doing gratitude is amazing, and keeping a gratitude journal, being grateful, being intentional about keeping it and being grateful, watching your thought patterns, change those thought patterns to being positive. And the way that you speak to yourself, look in the mirror, and just tell yourself, I love you. You were wonderfully made. You are made in the image of God. And really look in your eyes. And that's something that, so many of us, we try not to really look in it. We look in the mirror to see ourselves, but not really look in our eyes. And to really look at who we are and take the time to be heartfelt with yourself. And just spend time learning to know you. To build a relationship with yourself, because you're always with yourself. It'd be nice to have those moods, get away, but we're always there.
Yeah.
And it can paralyze us when we stop. And, are you someone that others would want to be around, or how can we change this? And a lot of those areas start with changing our emotions, changing the way we speak to each other, to ourselves, let alone to others, and being kind to yourself, along with others. And sometimes it's, overcoming the fear, and that gets in our way of moving forward. An unrealistic fear, can paralyze us. It prevents us from taking actions that we know we need to take.
Yeah. So how did you recover your identity?
I actually went through some different Bible studies and just really got into the Word and reading my Bible and learning, what did God say about me and who I am. And it was a long journey. Because of not knowing my name, I did make some wrong decisions along the way, and then trying to, correct back. I believe it's Joyce Meyer has one Bible study out I did, Battlefield of the Mind, I believe is hers, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I've done a couple of others kind of along that line, and just really looking at, who does God say I am? I was always in church. I always knew about God. I always loved God. I wasn't a Christian. It was just kind of the circumstances and the way I had internalized things, and losing my identity, and, how to deal with more than one set of family. So that's just kind of where we're at. But, going back, ways that we can work on ourselves is, the gratitude journal, the rebounding, breathing exercises are some awesome ones. Just getting out and moving, taking walks are amazing. Take a gratitude walk and just look at the beauty that God has created for us. And that can really help with our mindset when we start to get down.
And so what would you say to someone now who is having issues with their identity and struggling? If you were to give them just 3 things to do, what would you say?
Really have a heartfelt talk with the Lord. Get into your Bible. My identity, I guess, with it was, my last name. I just didn't know I knew my last name.
Yeah.
But just using a different last name, and, who knows this name or who knows that name. So for me, that's always caused more troubles because I had IDs in both names. Legally, but that's just the way it was.
Mm.
So, and things have changed over the years. But really, getting into what does God say who I am, and then looking at really just doing that, being grateful, being intentional with being grateful, and just take that time and realize that, yes, I am wonderfully made. God created me this. Satan is a liar. He's telling me these lies are not true. I am wonderfully made. I am smart. And a lot of times these are the things that we get in our mind that, oh, I'm not smart. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And yes, you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you on social media, Cherri?
I am, of course, just my name, Cherri Middleton. I also have Cherri Middleton Life Coaching on Facebook, along with Juniper Wellness on Facebook out of Springfield, Missouri. So there's several Juniper Wellnesses, but I'm out of Springfield, Missouri. So the one in particular would be my life coaching, and that's one I just launched and really haven't done a whole lot with, so there's not a lot of followers on there. That's a good way to reach me.
Okay, so the best place is Facebook, yeah?
Right, yeah, that's where I reach out to. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity that you've given me. So I really look forward to, reaching out to you again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wellbeing in the Kingdom, the show which has been created to empower you to take action towards your greater well-being in all its forms. If you have enjoyed, learned from, or been inspired by today's episode, then please help to support the show by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. For more information, click the link in the show notes now.